Tonight, bombshell new evidence from documents obtained by Fox showing that the FBI knew all about Christopher Steele's anti-Trump bias and yet continued to cite his unverified, unsourced dossier to renew multiple FISA warrants. The records also show extensive contacts between Steele and then top Justice Department official Bruce Ohr. In fact, Bruce Ohr knew Christopher Steele was totally desperate to stop Trump more than a month before the initial FISA application to spy on the Trump campaign was ever even filed. Joining me right now, former chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Fox News contributor and author of Power Grab, Jason Chaffetz, along with former FBI Assistant Director Danny Coulson. Good to have you both here. Danny, what's your reaction to all this?
Well, I'm not surprised. You have tremendous animus here against Mr. Trump, now President Trump, and these individuals use the power of their office to try to interfere with his election. And I think they violated the civil rights of people in the Trump campaign by putting forth a false document to get a warrant to spy on them. I was only in the FBI 30 years, so I may have missed something, but I've never seen in my entire lifetime anything this egregious or this frankly destructive to the reputation of the FBI and those who serve it.
Well, Jason, I suspect you're not surprised either, and you may not have been in the FBI for 30 years, but you served in Congress, and you felt as though you were a victim at times of the deep state as well, weren't you, sir?
Yes, it's just terribly disappointing. This is the highest echelon of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I was on the House Judiciary Committee when they were trying to reauthorize the FISA court. And it's a private, secret court. They wouldn't even let members of Congress see how they did this, but it allows the senior-most people to go before that court and present information that has to be balanced. But what we're learning here, Trish, what's so newsworthy about this is now we're actually seeing the documents that the DOJ knows have been there for a long time that show that they knew that this person was discredited. And remember, it was the acting director of the FBI, Mr. McCabe, who testified under oath that without this Steele dossier, they would have never gotten these warrants to basically go out and spy on a presidential campaign. Yeah. And does it get any worse than that?
No, it really doesn't. And don't forget, they never bothered to red flag it for the judge either, or to say that none of this stuff had actually been verified. You'd think if you had such salacious material, you might want to think about dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I mean, it is, after all, the FBI. They ought to be able to have the access, the resources to go out and investigate something and not rely on this hack, Christopher Steele, who had his own biases. I mean, that's what's evident here. And not just his own biases. Let's talk about Bruce Ohr, married to Nellie Ohr, who worked for Fusion GPS, who employed Christopher Steele. I mean, biases, and also, I would say, Danny, a lot of incestuous nature to the material in terms of who knew what.
Well, I think you're right. And there's one thing that's really important here, and that is that the director of the FBI did not let field agents do this case. He brought it back to headquarters, had people, his cronies, his immediate subordinates, doing this case. An agent in the field would not have done this. First of all, he's got to clear it through the field legal counsel, field supervisors, and field commanders. So Comey knew that, so he didn't let the field do it. He had headquarters people that owed him, and he had them do it, and that's part of the problem here. And I think he knew the FBI in the field was not corruptible. He was corruptible, so he took it away from us.
You know, one of the things that has come out is that by the fall of 2016, Bruce Ohr knew that Steele was, quote, desperate that Trump not be elected. So in other words, Christopher Steele felt so strongly about this and was sort of willing to push and do whatever was needed. I suppose timing matters here because this is right before that first FISA application. So they know Christopher Steele has a massive bias, and they never bothered to check his work, Jason?
Well, also,
remember,
think about this.
Hang on, first to Jason and then over to Danny. Jason.
Well, remember who's paying for all this. This is the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. Of course he's desperate to get this information. He's being paid to generate it. And this is how they go back and they create this document. Now, John Radcliffe, from the Judiciary Committee, congressman from Texas, has read the unredacted version of these FISA applications. At the very top of it, Trish, it says verified application. And at some point, Trish, they're going to have the courts. Justice Roberts is in charge of that FISA court. And at some point, the court's going to have to stand up for themselves and say, how did you snooker us? How did you provide such misleading information so that the judge in this case stamped an approval? I mean, the legislative branch can do so much, but the judicial branch has got to do something.
Absolutely. I mean, to think if you're the judge that's rubber stamping this stuff, I mean, look, the FISA court is scary enough, right? Because we don't know what goes on there. And now we're learning bit by bit that apparently a lot goes on. They never bother to actually get the right verified materials. I mean, Danny, I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm a reporter, right? Do you think I go with a story just because one person says this is true? Never, never. And yet the FBI goes with a story, a salacious story from Christopher Steele, who, by the way, never even went to Russia. And you want to talk about foreign intel influencing our campaign. I mean, this is a foreigner who's sitting overseas calling the Russians, by the way, his old buddies in Russia, to get intel on a U.S. presidential candidate. That sounds kind of warped to me.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't fault him as much as I do the FBI. It's their job to be truthful to the FISA court. I've made FISA court applications. I've signed off on many of them. The most important relationship we have is with that court, and we have to be honest, and we have to be forthcoming, and we can't hold back bad information. That is, I can't emphasize
unless, of course, you're in a political year.
Yeah.
And the presidency of the United States is on the line.
This is very important.
Trish,
think about had Trump not been elected, we wouldn't be talking about this today.
Yeah,
none of this would come out.
Hey, Jason, yes, tell me.
Remember, the FBI fired Steele. They put him off the payroll, but there's a reason why they had Bruce Orr do this, because Orr's wife is working for Fusion GPS, which is hired by the Democrats. That's a group of less than 20 people. That's just a coincidence that I'm sure that Nellie Orr, the wife of Bruce Orr, is there, and they have him interact with Steele. It is so bad, and there has got to be some repercussions here, and that's why I'm hopeful that Mr. Durham, the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut, will do it.
What's taken Mr. Horowitz so long to provide that information that I think America desperately needs?
Well, the most
I think
important
it's already
thing here is the United States Attorney
I think it's now with Durham.
Okay. All right, guys, it's good to see you. We're going to keep asking that question because we want them to get on it. Lots of questions.